Hey YouTube, it's Chaplain B. I have an article that I came across today from the National Catholic Reporter, and the article is entitled "For DC Airport Chaplain, Disaster Training Becomes Reality." What I want to do in this video is I want to break down several of the sections that are within this article, and I want to elaborate on them a little bit more. That way you can hear from a professional chaplain a little bit more about what is being referenced within this article and what this chaplain did to provide support in this tragedy that happened. So as you no doubt have heard, on the 29th of January there was a tragic mid-air collision at the Ronald Reagan National Airport in Washington, D.C. A regional passenger jet and a U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter collided in midair, resulting in 67 people who passed away. Now, what many of you may not know is that just like in hospitals and hospice and even the military and other contexts, chaplains also serve at airports across the country. And that night, the Ronald Reagan National Airport's senior chaplain, Nace Lanier, was notified of the collision and provided support. So one of the first things that's mentioned in the article is that when the chaplain arrived, one of the first things that he did is he worked with emergency coordinators, and he's quoted as saying that after years of preparing for a disaster like this, he said, "We have trained and prepared for an incident through the years, and working with the staff and communicating with the emergency coordinators allowed us to quickly set up a location that was safe, quiet, and as comfortable as possible for friends and family." So one of the first things that stands out to me is that, again, every chaplaincy, every spiritual care department, every professional chaplaincy, or every institution that has professional chaplaincies, we all have standard operating procedures already in place, planning and preparing for a disaster. We practice, we rehearse, we go through trainings to make sure that we're ready. But I can tell you, as a professional chaplain, when a crisis occurs, no amount of training can fully prepare you for what you're going to experience. But if you've practiced, if you've rehearsed, if you've gone through training already beforehand, you were able to do exactly what this chaplain did when this crisis occurred. It says that he arrived on the scene, worked with emergency coordinators, and quickly set up a location. So again, this, no doubt, it was part of their protocol to make sure to set up a space that the chaplain described was safe, quiet, and as comfortable as possible for friends and family. The article goes on to say that once the area for family and friends was set up, the chaplain provided direct support to the family and friends who were there. And the chaplain says, quote, "You listen far more than say anything. Being present is the key ministry gift we give to those we minister." And so within professional chaplaincy, we have an expression called ministry of presence. It's almost like a sacred thing that we do when we are present with somebody. And that's more than just showing up. We can show up and we can attempt to try to say all the things and do all the things, but sometimes what's really needed is to just be there with somebody. And again, that act of just sitting with somebody in silence sometimes, just like the chaplain said here, you listen far more than you say anything. Sometimes just doing that opens up a certain sacred space that allows the true need of the help seeker that you're trying to provide support to. It opens up a sacred space where their true need is able to surface. He also mentions here in this article that he worked with a team of people of other religions that he could contact when he received a request for support from people who did not share his faith. So every chaplain is endorsed by a religious faith group. And this is part of becoming a professional chaplain. You have to have an endorsement, and that's kind of like a vetting, if you will, from our own particular religious tradition. And our endorsement dictates to us, and our endorsement is associated with our individual religious beliefs. And our endorsement tells us, what are our left and right limits as to what we can directly provide. So what can we perform? What can we provide ourselves? What are the left and right limits of that? And if we get asked to do something, or we're interacting with somebody that's not our particular religion, then we have to be true to our own religious beliefs. But that doesn't mean that we do not provide support to the person. So the chaplain mentioned something really important here, that in a situation where there were other faiths, other religions that were in this space that he helped to create, he made sure that if they were outside of his own tradition, outside of his own endorsement, outside of his own religious heritage, I think the article says that he was Baptist, he made sure to work with a team of other religions, other people who could provide support in the moment. And this goes hand in hand with what's mentioned next. The chaplain says, I was a part of a team to holistically care for the hurting and the confused. I was able to pray with those who requested prayer. It was an honor to serve with their permission by holding their hands and praying to our God, who was present but at that time silent. So again, what he says here directly connects to what I just said about endorsement. We know that there's going to be a power dynamic that's going to be there. And the power dynamic is because we're there to help and we're there to serve, but in the eyes of the help seeker, we represent the institution. So in this case, the professional chaplain who was providing support works for the Ronald Reagan Airport, Ronald Reagan National Airport. And so this chaplain represents this institution. Just like every other chaplain who, let's say, works for a hospital, they represent the hospital. The chaplains that serve in the military, they wear the uniform, they have a rank, they're commissioned officers, they have an insignia on their uniform. Again, they represent the command and they represent the institution. And so there's a power dynamic that comes with that. And part of professional chaplaincy is to be sensitive to that power dynamic. And what we never want to do is we never want to ignore that power dynamic, because what may end up happening is, in an attempt to try to be the best helper that we can be, we may very well end up imposing our religious beliefs onto the person. The chaplain mentions here also holding hands while praying to God. Again, it's different for every chaplain, but sometimes physical human touch can be a very powerful intervention in the moment. Further down in the article, there's another chaplain that's mentioned, Chaplain Burton, Roderick Burton. And Chaplain Burton talks about serving airport workers and mentioning that airport workers may also need a listening ear. And it may be something as simple as asking a staff member, when is the last time you took a break? When is the last time that you checked in on your family? You look exhausted. You want to just sit down for a little bit and maybe take a knee, or something as simple as, hey, I got you this, bottle of water, or here's a snack from the vending machine, or what have you. We're performing small gestures for our staff to let them know that they're human beings also, and that they don't have an infinite amount of energy, an infinite amount of just, willpower. They themselves also have to take a knee, and sometimes that can get lost in a crisis moment. Everybody's so focused on doing all the things that need to be done, which is the right answer, but sometimes they can lose sight of their own needs. He mentions other employees at the airport that will also be affected. One of the things that we think about as professional chaplains is we think about what other moments are being surfaced with this crisis, right? So what I mean by that is we're also aware that as human beings we have life experiences in the past, and perhaps it may be the case that something that is seen or heard in this crisis, maybe it has surfaced something else that happened in the past for other people. This is especially true with law enforcement. And one thing that I've come to be aware of in reading about chaplains who provide support to law enforcement, and a particular scene or particular crime scene in the moment may not affect a law enforcement officer. However, it may be the case that something about what they responded to, maybe that touched on something that happened years ago in the past that maybe they didn't process, or maybe it was just particularly traumatic for them in the past. And so maybe it's the case that something that's occurred here has surfaced something that happened in the past. And again, as professional chaplains, we're thinking about these things. We know that this might be the case. And so as we're interacting with people, as we're doing our circulation, as we're checking in on individuals, we're listening for some of these things. So again, there's so much that goes on with providing crisis support from the perspective of the chaplain. And I want to say that if after listening to all of this, you're wondering who checks on the chaplain, that's a great question. Sometimes it's the case that us as chaplains, we completely forget to check up on ourselves. And one of the things that was mentioned in this article is chaplaincy teams. And I love that reference at the end of the article. Chaplains, we really have to have a chaplain who serves chaplains. We have to have that one chaplain that we can call to debrief after we've gone through a crisis like this. So I don't know who these chaplains are that were mentioned here, Chaplain Burton, Chaplain Lanier, but my hope and prayer is that there's good chaplains who are serving them, because this crisis, along with the other experiences that they talk about here, they do affect us, and we do need to debrief. Within professional chaplaincy, we do talk a lot about self-care and about making sure that we do the things that we need to do to recharge and to stay ready so that we can be there for others. Well, we're going to go ahead and end there. Again, this is Chaplain B. Thank you for being you. Thank you for honoring me with your presence. We continue to remember in our thoughts and in our prayers the families of those that lost loved ones in this tragedy. And I'm so thankful I was able to come across this article and share it with you on the profoundly difficult but important work that these chaplains provided in this crisis. And again, until next time, this is Chaplain B.